Welcome to the Zain Battla podcast. If you know me, you know I'm a person who loves conversations, whether it's about passions or ideas or current events. If you don't know me personally, then maybe you'll figure out that I'm not really a subject matter expert in anything, but I do consider myself a person who knows a little bit about a lot of things. I want to take you on this journey with me of continuing to learn. In the beginning, I'm going to be bringing guests within my network, and as a Muslim American, a lot of people will be coming from that community. I hope that you continue to join me on this journey, and I want to thank you for listening. All right, Waleed Naser, thank you for joining today. Nashville, born and raised. You're out here in Chicago now. How are you liking it in Chicago?
Man, I love it here. This is my second go around at Chicago. Me and my wife lived here right after we got married. Right after the pandemic, we got married, moved to Evanston for a minute, and then moved down to the city. I hated my job, but didn't really like that, so we moved to Atlanta. Did Atlanta for about a year and a half, and now this is our second go around, man. Live in the South Loop, love Chicago. World-class city, especially in the summertime. Can be a little gloomy right now, a little gloomy, dark and cold, but if you can get through that, man, like the city is where it's at.
Yeah, because you've lived in Nashville, Atlanta, Chicago. Am I missing anything?
Dallas.
Oh yeah, Dallas. That's right. That's how we linked up for the first time.
That's where this bromance started.
That's very true. I mean, I remember the first time we met at ZOL's. We got the pizza, and right before we got the pizza, you said, "Hey, I've been making pizza my whole life.
Yeah.
We used to own a pizza business," and I was very intimidated that he's not going to be impressed by the pizza because I hyped it up so much. And
yeah, it was good. It was good pizza. It was, I kind of had a little bit low expectations going in and a little bit low expectations when I first saw the pizza. Yeah. But then after tasting it, I was really impressed. Now there's obviously different types of pizza. So that you have like the New York style, you have the Chicago style, you have different like Neapolitan styles. And then you just have what I call like the American fast pizza style, which is like Papa John's, Domino's, which is good. Like it's hard to make a bad pizza. But when I saw it, I was like, okay, this is American fast pizza style, which is not particularly my favorite. But then when I tasted it, I was like, man, okay, this might be the best fast American pizza that I've had. So it was very impressed. Super cheesy. I'm normally not a big fan of cheese, but this one, the cheesiness worked on it.
which one is your favorite out of the styles?
I think I like Neapolitan the most. After that, New York style. Not a really big Chicago style pizza guy. And then definitely like fast American. But I do like grub out on some Papa John's every once in a while. Papa John's is my one out of the big three.
The big three. Papa John's is the way to go. That garlic sauce at Papa John's is just...
And the guy's a racist apparently, but I mean, whatever.
He's always sweating
Did you
in
hear about
every...
that? John Schneider?
I heard about it, and he got booted off by his executive board for saying the N-word or something.
Something like that. I don't remember, but I just remember he's a racist.
Yeah, all I remember about him is any video they would show, because he was a huge Trump guy, any video they would show, he would always look like he's sweating or that he just worked out, but he would be wearing the Papa John's gear.
Yeah.
So it was always very strange when I would see him and, in the commercial.
It's weird because like, I kind of like looked up to him sort of as like a kid because, my dad was always a first generation immigrant and worked in pizza forever. So like he delivered pizza. I know like a lot of immigrants can relate to, their parents having these kind of like blue collar jobs. Right. Like he delivered pizza, he made pizza, and he worked at Papa John's for a while. Wow. And he's the one who first told me the story about John Schneider, which is like, started making pizzas at his dad's bar, started selling pizzas, sold his car, the whole like infamous story, and got enough money to start, selling pizzas at the dad's bar and everything. And he made it like to the top. He made this pizza franchise. My dad then opened a pizza restaurant. It was a very successful pizza restaurant for maybe like 10 years. I had some ventures into pizza, and I worked at what I think is the best pizza place in Nashville. It's called 5 Points Pizza.
5 Points? Okay.
That might be the best pizza I've ever had in the United States for sure. Like if you're in Nashville, you should definitely check out 5 Points Pizza.
Okay. I mean, there's probably some bias there on...
I would like to consider myself to be an objective pizza I guess, analyst, even though I did work at many pizza places, but I think there's something special about 5 Points Pizza. There's definitely something special about it.
All right, well, 5 Points Pizza, I'll have to give it a try. But you were saying, and I think that's a good segue, is your dad started a pizza restaurant. It ran successfully for about 10 years. And then from there, how did your journey go from being pizza boy Waleed all the way to immigration lawyer Waleed to who you are today? Kind of take me through that journey, how you ended up there.
Yeah, so that's kind of definitely a long and like story that ended up kind of in the same place, but never really how I thought I would get there. I always had this interest for like law enforcement and prosecution and the criminal justice system from like the law enforcement prosecutor side. But then after I graduated and I kind of got out of that like environment of the ivory tower kind of environment, I kind of started seeing things. This was right around like Trayvon Martin. And I started seeing really how the police act and how the criminal justice system is really skewed and everything. And it just drew me away from that. And ultimately, I was kind of lost for this period where I was just like hopping from like pizza place to pizza place. And I finally found a home at 5 Points Pizza, which is in East Nashville. It's in a neighborhood called 5 Points, like one of the coolest neighborhoods in Nashville, I think. I finally found a home there. Like the owner and his wife are actually lawyers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they left the practice of law to open this pizza restaurant, and they kind of had choice words to say about going into the practice of law, but I didn't let it deter me. And through that time, while I was there, I learned like a lot of management skills, people skills. I was dealing with different people from all over the country, just who are working there and visiting that neighborhood and just interacting with so many people, and it was a great, great, great life experience. Taught me time management and efficiency mostly, which I use currently to this day.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people undermine working in retail, working in fast food.
Yeah.
They don't, if they haven't worked in it, they don't know how hard it is, how tough that type of lifestyle and job is.
For sure. It definitely gives you those core skills like work ethic, time management, people, customer service. It gives you those kind of hard, those core skills that you need no matter what you transition into. So like it's very, very valuable.
So did those skills play out at all within your practice or any other law firms that you worked for prior?
Yeah, for sure. It definitely started in law school. Learning how to manage my time properly, and being amongst like people who were like kind of the who's who of the community. I had no idea that I was going to be interacting with people. I remember during orientation, there was a guy sitting next to me who turned out to be a Republican candidate for president's grandson.
Wow.
So yeah, this dude's granddad was running for president, right? And I'm over here like next to him, I'm like, everyone's scared. No one really knows what's happening. It's kind of like a Hogwarts type of experience. So yeah, you have to learn how to, what's important, how to manage your time, how to do all that from the get-go. And in law practice, 100%. Yeah, especially when you're on your own. You really have to hone in on those, because if not, you're going to be tied to your business, and there's really no separation.
Yeah, I think it's definitely valuable, and it's interesting to hear that even working at a pizza restaurant or people who work in retail or fast food or anywhere else that's considered more of the working class type of work, how much of those skills transfer into something that's considered by society a bit more on the professional side, such as law.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a certain skill set that you need when you have skilled jobs like that, like attorney, accountant, physician, even trade workers. You need to have certain physical skills and craftsmanship. But I learned a concept when I was working at my dad's restaurant, which is if we got a customer who called us because the pizza was late or something was wrong, I asked, what can I do to fix it? That was the question that I would ask the customers. You know what I mean? And it always got them to chill out. You know what I mean? It always got them to be like, oh, okay, like this dude is really just, he wants to know how to fix the problem. And they give me the proposed solution, And if it's good and if it's reasonable, then we do it for them. And it's just that kind of customer service and that kind of customer satisfaction that's required to maintain like a successful restaurant, successful retail store, whatever it is. That definitely plays in. That overall kind of shaping of your attitude, at least when it comes to customer satisfaction, is great. And you got to learn how to be efficient and fast. If you got to get someone their pizza in 30 minutes or it's free, you got to learn how to make it, deliver it, leave a smile on the customer's face, and that stuff definitely translates.
So with that being said, do you think that your clients that you currently have, I know you pursued immigration law, you now have your own law firm, would love to hear about your experience within immigration law at your firms, and then your current firm, how you kind of segued into deciding to open up your own firm. And then maybe there's some of those customer service type skills that you picked up just working on pizza that you're applying now to your clients, because I'm sure there were times where a client called you and you just basically said, what can I do to fix it? Mm-hmm. And it's something much more serious than, am I going to get my pizza? It's, am I going to get deported? Am I going to be able to get citizenship? So would love to hear about that journey.
I didn't know I was going to be an immigration lawyer when I went to law school. I didn't know really that was a practice area. I kind of always wanted to do criminal defense. And I did work a summer at the public defender's office, and I was working on like some appeals cases, and I just really didn't get much satisfaction out of that. And I realize now that there's way more to criminal defense work than doing like appellate work or appeals after someone's already been convicted. There's a lot of boots on the ground type of work and community advocacy that unfortunately I didn't really get to see in law school. But my internship there did lead me to like discovering immigration. So when I was working at the public defender's office, we had a client who was Somali, and he was in prison. So the prison was right across the street. So one of the lawyers came down. We were all the interns were in this basement, and in this really kind of like musty building in Nashville. Anyways, one of the lawyers comes down. He's like, "Hey, does anyone speak Somali?" And everyone's like, "No." And I was like, "Hey, I speak Arabic. Most of the Somalians speak Arabic, or they can maybe understand Arabic, right?" So he's like, "All right, come on, you're good enough. Come with me." So we literally we walk across the street to the prison, and there's this like Somalian guy. It was like behind some glass. It was dark. It was crazy. And the guy didn't speak a word of Arabic. So I just got to go along for the ride and just see what was going on. But they were talking about the immigration consequences of his conviction or guilty plea that he was about to do. And that, for me, at that moment, I was like, wait, what? Like, immigration consequences? Like this guy could, like, he's not just in jail and going to be convicted, or, but he's also going to suffer immigration consequences. And at that moment, like, it really just opened up for me. I was like, wow, okay, there's a whole nother world. And then that next year when I went back to law school, I started looking into it a little bit more. And there was an internship that was open with ICE. And so I prayed on it a lot, asked a lot of my mentors, and I ended up applying for the internship and I got it. So I was like an ICE prosecutor for almost a year, like while I was in law school, like during 2 semesters. And we got to go to court on some things. At the end of an immigration case in immigration court, there's like a trial. We call it an individual hearing. Yeah. But we didn't get to do much of those because they were really heavy and we were law students and stuff like that. But I think I got to try one while I was there at ICE. And I still like see that person, because you have to cross-examine the immigrant, right? You have to ask them questions and like poke holes in their stories and stuff like that. And like I still see that like just fear, not that he was scared of me, but like fear of the consequences, right, in his eyes. And I just like, at that point I was like, all right, I cannot do the government. I cannot do government work. I cannot be on the prosecutorial side. And I kind of discovered that already, while I wanted to be a police officer and a prosecutor and all that, and then I shifted. But this one really just kind of put the end to it. So I was like, all right, I need to make up for this for this horrible betrayal to my people that I've just done. So my next summer I had an internship. I got an internship with the International Refugee Assistance Project in Amman, Jordan. And that was like, okay, I went from like one end of the extreme all the way to like the other end. I was like an ICE prosecutor. Now I'm like a bleeding heart liberal who's like helping refugees in the Middle East. And that was a really eye-opening experience, really eye-opening experience. First of all, I learned that my Arabic was trash. My Arabic was really bad, even though I had to communicate with these people. People were laughing at me. My Arabic is a very like, they call it fallahi, which is like a country type of.
You're the redneck of Arabs.
Yeah, I don't even really read Arabic or write it that well, but all I've learned it well from just like absorbing from my parents and just listening to how they speak at home, and it's just this crazy kind of Arabic that a lot of maybe your viewers might know, that is like a cha instead of a kaf or a kaf or whatever. But I also got to experience just like crazy sadness and stories, and it was a really eye-opening experience, and I met a lot of like survivors, like real survivors, saw a lot of scars, emotional scars, physical scars, because a lot of the times, unfortunately, some refugees believe that if they can physically prove to you that they've suffered more harm, then they can move through the process faster. So they like to show you their scars. I remember one woman, she just had a slash like right all the way down, like from her shoulder, like all the way through her belly. It was just a huge slash, and it's just like the atrocities that go on in the Middle East. You know what I mean? Right. They're horrible, and sometimes, unfortunately, our immigration laws now are not tailored to helping those people come over here. They're really tailored to preventing them from coming over here or making it harder for them to get benefits.
I imagine that it's actually very hard to imagine as a refugee what they go through, because what makes sense in my head that why would they seek refuge elsewhere in the first place? Or why would they immigrate from one country to another? Why would they leave everything that they know in order to go to a country where they don't know anything? And to me, it's, their country that they're coming from is under some sort of economic circumstances, or they want a better economic life, or they're trying to escape war. So assuming that these are the types of people that you deal with on a day-to-day in your practice, the ones that are trying to make a better life or trying to leave a war-torn country or situation?
Well, no refugee wants to leave their home. Like everyone that I've ever talked to that's a refugee wants to go back to their country. And I'm talking mostly, for me, I've had a lot of experience with Syrians, Iraqis, Sudanese. They all want to go back to their country. Like this isn't like, oh, we get to come to the US now. It's like, no, you have a family member in the US, your country is being bombed to smithereens, and you have to get out of there. And coming to the United States is better than living in a tent. So that's pretty much the way that they see it. As far as my practice goes, refugee stuff happens for the most part outside of the United States. So refugees get processed by the UN, and once they have a refugee status determination, that's kind of like their ticket to come to the United States. So if you're practicing in the US, you don't really deal too much with the refugee process, because that mostly happens outside of the US. But we definitely get a lot of asylum seekers here. I also do a lot of federal court litigation, which is like, fighting for immigrants' rights in the federal courts. There's also employment-based immigration. This is one of the reasons that really drew me to the subject matters, because it's so broad. Criminal immigration, which we call crimmigration, kind of drew me into it. But once I got in there, I'm like, okay, there's employment law, there's family law, there's international law, there's contracts, there's treaties. Everything that you and I face in our daily lives that we might need a lawyer for, an immigrant also faces those. So like, for example, if you're getting a job, just you or I, like we don't really think too much about it, we should get a job, right? Right. Immigrants have to think about the immigration consequences of their job. If their immigration status lets them get a job, if that job is in line with their particular immigration status. So So it implicates so many different fields of law. That's why that's what drew me to it, and that's what makes it so interesting. So,
Go
so
ahead.
I think it is a common misconception, that people think that all immigrants or immigration lawyers deal with border crossing issues or people who are refugees fleeing their countries. I know an immigration lawyer who her entire practice is visas for hockey players. She gets hockey players from all over Europe and Canada to come to the United States and play hockey. So it's very broad.
Very broad, and I think just me, and maybe I'm speaking for most Americans, you would think that as many people that immigrate here, or that we're a place where we say we welcome outsiders, that we would have a bit more understanding on the immigration process. And me being from the South Asian community, there's so many people that immigrate not for the purpose of, oh, we want to move back to Pakistan or India. They say, no, we want to create our dreams in the United States. But when I hear terms such as H-1B or green card or F-1B that I've heard a few times, they're just words to me a lot of the times. And I know that, green card might be better than H-1B, and there's some benefits to either one. But would you be able to kind of give a breakdown of at least the important ones of immigration status?
Yeah, for sure. So there's there's certain like categories of immigration, right? There's 5 general categories. The first one is family. Someone can immigrate to the United States through a qualifying family member, like a spouse, a child, a parent, sibling. The second one is employment, which it covers H-1B. H-1B is a specialty occupation visa that's only available for people who have a bachelor's degree. So, for example, like a software engineer, if you have a bachelor's degree in software engineering, your employer can ask for you to be on an H-1B if the job requires, a software engineer to do it. So there's employment-based, which is broad, which covers like athletes and artists and entertainers. Piers Morgan, things like that. John Oliver, Justin Bieber. These are like entertainment-based employment visas. The third category is what we call bad luck, which is what we kind of just talked about: asylum, refugee status, temporary protected status. There's also good luck, which is if you win the diversity lottery visa that goes on every year. There's like 55,000 free green cards that are given away from countries that don't have a lot of representation in the U.S. Millions of people apply every year, only 55,000 win. So it's kind of like a very chaotic time when the diversity lottery visa opens and you're an immigration lawyer. You get a lot of calls. And then the final one is what we call non-immigrant visas, which are like coming into the United States for a temporary period for a specific purpose. So like a tourist, a student, some sort of like a seasonal agricultural worker, things like that. So those are kind of the 5 basic categories. There's another one that kind of fits under employment, which is investment. So you can invest. Actually, these days you can kind of just buy a green card for $1.2 million if you have it. So if you have $1.2 million, then you can essentially just buy your way to a green card.
Wow, just buying your way. I'm sure that's how the people you named, Justin Bieber and theirs is more entertainment.
Piers Morgan, I actually heard him talk about this with Bassem Youssef the other day. They both have EB-1 green cards, which is the employment-based first preference, which is for aliens of extraordinary abilities in the arts. So Bassem Youssef and Piers Morgan both came to the United States because they are aliens of extraordinary ability in the arts.
I always hear that word aliens and just think of people from Mars, but for some reason that's still the legal term used for
There's a movement
immigrants.
To change it. There's a movement to change it to non-citizen. Okay. It's catching on right now, somewhat, and now if anyone says, it's crazy because when we have to go to court and we have to read the text of the actual like law, we have to say alien. But it's kind of like taboo now to say alien. But
well, the fact that you brought up the celebrities such as Piers Morgan, Bassem Youssef, Justin Bieber, it reminded me of the 21 Savage incident where he was being shipped back to Britain, or there was a lot of misinformation on it. I didn't exactly know what was going on from a legal standpoint, but I know that there was a lot of people poking jokes online, talking about his British heritage. What was the legal implications in that scenario?
If I understand correctly, 21 Savage probably, I think I read this somewhere online, so don't quote me, but I think 21 Savage came with his mom as a tourist a long time ago and just overstayed his visa and never left.
By that many years?
Yeah. So, and it's not unusual. It's not unusual. People come to the United States, they overstay their tourist visa, they fly under the radar. They wait till their kid turns 21 and their 21-year-old kid can get a green card for them.
Maybe that's how he came up with his name.
21 Savage.
He was just like,
oh man. Yeah, I actually have clients. I have this old Desi woman, you know, really sweetest old lady, and she came to the United States forever ago, overstayed her tourist visa, and her son just turned, 21, and he's gonna petition for her. So she's been just flying under the radar, just not making any problems, living her life low key, following the rules, and now she's finally, after all these years, hopefully going to be able to get some sense of permanency.
That's awesome. Yeah. No, and it sounds like you're changing a lot of people's lives. I'm sure mostly for the better, but I'm not saying that you're making other people's lives worse in any way, but what I am trying to say is there's probably so many challenges that go into immigration, and there's so much, as you just showed, so much complexity that goes into it, and the narrative of the immigration lawyer now with so many immigrants that have come to the US is we don't need any more and we need to keep them out. So what would you say is the biggest challenges of not just being an immigration lawyer, but having your own law firm?
I think that the biggest challenges for me is making sure that I put every single client of mine on a path to success. You know what I mean? And that takes just a lot of time and energy and research and understanding the particular individual situation. But I feel like once I've got that initial determination about this is the best path for you, once I get that set up, they're pretty much kind of off to the races. But that sometimes can take a long time to develop, that kind of strategy plan, and it also can be, it can change. It's contingent on certain things happening or not happening. So that's the biggest challenge, but it's also one of the most enjoyable parts of the job, which is like every client comes to you with a unique set of facts and a unique problem, and you have to draw upon your skills and your knowledge to be able to kind of prescribe to them a remedy that's going to help them solve their problem. So it's a puzzle. It's creative. It's very interactive with the client. So it's a challenge, but it's also very rewarding.
I think one of the biggest legal challenges or legal hurdles right now that is happening worldwide right now, and essentially for 75 years, is the Palestinian conflict. I'm sure there's lots of laws that Israel has laid out to legitimize their occupation against the Palestinians. And even now, there is constant usage of either US laws or Israeli laws to legitimize the occupation from a legal standpoint. So I know that over the past month, you've been relatively involved within the Palestinian legal space. So I'd love to hear more about, things that you've discovered, what kind of efforts you've been leading, and what has come about there.
Yeah, I agree with you that there's, really, since 9/11, we have not seen, our minority groups, Arab, Muslim, under attack like they are now. Obviously, physical attacks here and there, verbal harassments and intimidation, but also what's more sinister is just like this systematic legal mechanisms that are being put in place right now to suppress us and to push a narrative forward that the powers that be want to have be the prevailing narrative. So we're fighting that tooth and nail, and our community of Muslims and Arabs right now we're educated, we're smart, we have voices, we're using those voices, and we're ringing the alarm bells everywhere we can. For example, in the immigration space, we are working on TPS for Palestine.
TPS?
Yeah, TPS is temporary protected status.
Okay.
So it's available to individuals from certain countries if their country is facing a natural disaster or a war or a genocide, obviously, like we're seeing in Palestine. And the Secretary of Department of Homeland Security, along with the President and the Secretary of State, must designate a certain country or an area of the country for temporary protected status. And basically that helps all of the Palestinians that are already in the United States. So there are Palestinians in the United States right now that are on tourist visas, that are on student visas, that are on work visas that expire. And if they expire, their options are really limited if they don't go back to their home country. And if they go back to their home country, their likelihood of dying is very high. So normally in situations like this, the US government will grant special protections to individuals of those countries. And we are, there's a group of like 25, 30 immigration lawyers. We started this push for TPS for Palestine, and really in the past month, it has taken off. I mean, there's letters out there that have over 100 Congress people who have signed them.
Wow.
We have confirmation from those offices that, this idea has been spoken into President Biden's ear, and that those secretaries of Department of Homeland Security and State are aware of this, and it's a very high priority for them. So I'm really hoping that we can get that. That would help the Palestinians that are here immediately, and then we can kind of shift our focus to helping the Palestinians that are out of the United States. We are doing that already, but unfortunately, the options are very, very limited right now. The options are very limited right now. I actually had a call with some healthcare professionals that wanted to evacuate multiple people of their staff from Gaza, and unfortunately their options are very limited. Right. So we're doing what we can right now to protect those that are here, and we're backing up the kind of boots on the ground resources with whatever kind of legal support that they need, because right now the situation, like, there's no one in, no one out. Gaza is just an enclosed prison. And I think sometimes that, it's built that way. I mean, it's a concentration camp. It's built to be easily closed off. You can flick a switch and Gaza will be closed to the world. And I think that's the way that's designed in order for, the Israeli government to implement its most sinister practices, as some of the most horrible things we've ever seen. But you were talking earlier also about them using the laws against us, and they are using the laws to justify their occupation and to justify what they're doing. That's a double-edged sword. We have laws too. We have laws that we can exploit. There's so much out there that we as lawyers who are on the side of a free Palestine can do here in the United States, to take legal action against what's going on. And I think that's going to be the kind of next foray into legal help for Palestinians, is what we're going to do after, how we're going to make you pay, right?
It's not like us as Americans, or minority Americans especially the Black community, who's gone through Jim Crow. Before that, slavery was basically legal. And then even in more modern times, the expanded surveillance on Muslims and essentially the ban on free speech for people who want to participate in the BDS movement. Yeah. We're seeing this types of shutdowns all over different states, different campuses. Yeah. And it's almost like, shouldn't the Bill of Rights supersede these state laws and these anti-boycott laws that are passing? Because don't I have the right to free speech as the First Amendment? Don't I have the right to protest because of the First Amendment? So how is it that they're able to, and I don't know if you know the answer, but how is it that they're able to pass these laws if, in my head, what makes the most sense is anything that's on the Bill of Rights or anything that's in the First Amendment of the United States is, that should supersede anything.
Yeah, so it does. And there's actually something in the Constitution called the Supremacy Clause, which basically says that this is the supreme law of the land. And there's a concept, a doctrine in the law that's called preemption. So preemption means that there's like a hierarchy of laws. So if there's a county law, the state law trumps it, right? If there's a federal law, it trumps the state law, right? If it's in the Constitution, it trumps everything, you know. So yeah, you're right. But the Constitution only applies to U.S. government actors. It does not apply to private corporations. So the Constitution protects you against infringements on your right by the government, not necessarily by private actors. So if a police officer comes to you and tries to get you off the sidewalk because you're protesting, yeah, he's violating your First Amendment. You have an argument that he's violating your First Amendment. But if your employer fires you for saying something, there's no First Amendment protection. There's no First Amendment protection there. There are federal laws like the Civil Rights Act that fill the gap that you can possibly, you know, sue under those laws. But the U.S. Constitution does not protect you. And you know, unfortunately, even the First Amendment and the U.S. Constitution is getting twisted like crazy by, you know, these state legislators. Like if you see the anti-BDS laws that are passed, they're blatantly unconstitutional. I mean, there's no way that a law like that, it should have been laughed out of every legislative branch that it ever stepped foot in. Yeah. But for some reason they pass, and they know that they're never going to survive. I mean, they're getting struck down by courts left and right. I think the only one that has survived so far is like one from Arkansas. It's kind of like oddball outlier. They've all been struck down, and it's just a no-brainer argument that you strike these laws down. But that's not preventing them from passing them anyways, because they know that by the time it gets to the courts, some of their intended impact would have already been done, right? They wanted that media attention, or they didn't want that person to work for them, and she didn't sign the contract, and they wanted to bring this to a, you know, talking point in the media or something like that. So even though they're breaking the law blatantly, they still pass it, and just they want those sinister effects, no matter if it's a clear violation of the Constitution.
It is very frustrating because I think free speech in general is so powerful, and a lot of these free speech absolutists that are in Congress, or even media figures like Ben Shapiro, for as long as, you know, I've known him as an individual, he's always preached on the left is attacking free speech because of pronouns, or because of various other things, that we're being silenced, we're being canceled. But then when we're criticizing the Israeli government, it's one thing to criticize the US government, but it seems like a bigger sin in their eyes is to criticize the Israeli government, which people like Ben Shapiro or free speech absolutists in Congress, these are the very things that they should be allowing. They should be allowing BDS and saying, yeah, even though I don't believe in it, I still think that you should be able to do it. And this is a very non-violent form of protesting. So it just confuses me a lot of the times when these people who have power or have authority, people who can pass laws, that they're still able to take the side of what goes against their quote-unquote morals.
Yeah. And it's funny that you bring up Ben Shapiro and free speech, because I actually asked him a very similar question when he came to the University of Memphis at my law school. He came to talk. It was a very, obviously, extremely right-leaning event. Mm-hmm. You know, yarmulkes everywhere, which I don't have anything against Jews. I love the Jewish people. I really do think they have a beautiful faith. My problem is with Zionists. But I asked him, he was talking about free speech, right? Like you were saying, he was just propping up free speech and how we should protect free speech and all of this kind of stuff. And basically I got up there and I asked him kind of a pre-planned question. And I was so nervous. I was so scared. I was with my friend, Charlie Argana, if you're watching. I was so scared. I was like I had his Palestine shirt on. And I go up there and I was like, I made some pleasantries. I don't remember exactly what I said, but I was like, I agree with most of what you say about free speech. I think you have a good perspective, but now I want to shift the conversation to Israel a little bit. And I read him off some of these laws that they have in Israel, which are like the anti-Nakba demonstration laws that they have within like Israel proper.
Can you give 1 or 2 examples of what an anti-Nakba law is?
Yeah, so basically like the Nakba Day is also the Israeli Independence Day, right? So they're having their independence festivities. You're not allowed to have a Nakba memorial march or anything like that, right? The catastrophe, the mass displacing of Palestinians during 1948.
Even if you're a Palestinian that lives in current day Israel?
Yes,
Wow.
that's correct. So that's obviously a limitation on free speech. So I tried to back him into a corner, and I was like, hey, do you think this law would pass U.S. constitutional muster? And if not, why is it okay? And basically, and everyone was looking at me. I was so scared. I was so scared. And basically, he was like, no, I don't think that would pass U.S. constitutional muster, but I have a problem with people calling your Independence Day a catastrophe. And that's literally all he said to me. And I was like, thank you. I was like,
And then he said, facts don't care about your feelings.
I literally just left, and then I puked in the dumpster outside. That's how like scared I was. Like I was so nervous. Like all of these people were looking at me. They were all against me. They started booing me.
Oh my God.
You know, and it was just like the most like crazy thing. My friend Charlie was just like, he's like, what's wrong with this guy? Like I was looking for a dumpster to puke in. But you know, back to the main point, which is, you know, the systematic like passage of laws and stuff like that. I mean, it's disgusting. There's a bill right now in Congress that wants to literally expel every Palestinian from the United States.
Wait. What do you mean that there's a law that's banning Palestinians? I didn't hear about this.
Yeah, so there's a law introduced by some senator or someone, Kuhn, I don't know. I think he's from Montana or Wyoming or South Dakota, like somewhere where there was like no people. And it basically introduced this law that said that, you know, we are going to expel Palestinian, at least students and tourists and people that are on what we call non-immigrant visas, people who are here for a temporary period of time for a specific reason. I'm not exactly sure of the context because I've been working mostly on like the Palestine TPS stuff, but it kind of floated my way. A lot of people that I know said it's not going to get any traction, it's not going to go anywhere. It's blatantly unconstitutional and illegal. But again, they just want to pass it to get that sting, you know, to get that their folks riled up and to say, oh, look, like an anti-Palestine law, like this is something that we can get behind. And, you know, unfortunately, that's just the way that's part of their dirty tricks. And, you know, Democrats do it too. Like, you know, they put out their, you know, overarching, you know, environmental legislation that no one knows everyone knows is not gonna happen, but it's a start. You know what I mean? So we got to make sure that it doesn't catch up. And what people can do, normal people can do, is just pick up the phone and call your congressman, drive them crazy. Like that is what they're paid to do. You know, there's this concept of like direct democracy, you know, where you talk directly to your representative. Call them. You know, they have staff in their office that field questions like this and tell them, we don't want this bill to be passed, or we want you to call for a ceasefire, or we want you to support TPS for Palestine. They're really getting overwhelmed. You know, and that's actually really good because I think the tides are turning a little bit.
Yeah, and it seems like even there's a lot of staff in Congress that are walking out. They're saying ceasefire now. They're pushing their own employer essentially to call for a ceasefire. And a lot of people from different campaigns currently, they're leaving the campaign because their candidate is pro-Israel or complicit in the funding of Israel. Yeah. So I would say that the tide is turning, but it always feels like you're just a small person and there's a lot of small people around you and you're just facing off against this big entity, big nameless, faceless entity. So in that instance, is there any hope at the end? Like, is it, okay, they call for a ceasefire and then they just continue their occupation? Is there any success going to come out of after the ceasefire when it happens? Hopefully, very soon.
I think that's hard to tell. You know, I'm not really like a military operations type of guy. You know what I mean? I'm not really familiar with, you know, how the military functions. I'm more of like a third branch of government guy, judicial branch, lawyer, taking stuff to court. So I'm not really sure about like what the practical effects of a ceasefire and stuff are. But from a legal perspective, did you know that actually President Biden was recently sued for being complicit to genocide?
Really?
Yes, him, Tony Blinken, and Lloyd Austin, who is the Secretary of Defense, were all named defendants in a lawsuit that basically allege violation of international law, and these are being brought in the U.S. courts. Which is huge. It's huge. Saying even just alleging incredible. This is a 73-page complaint. Like the allegations are 73 pages long. About the United States being complicit in genocide, and to even allege these kind of things and file them in court, is a huge turn of events. Wow. It's a huge turn of events, and here in the United States, like us Palestinian immigration lawyers, Muslim lawyers, Muslim and Palestinian friendly lawyers, like we are really uniting really, really fast, and you're right. They're getting kicked out. The students are having problems with free speech, but there's a lawyer or a nonprofit that's ready to go in right then and take that case. I used to work for the Muslim Legal Fund of America. They did a lot of great Muslim civil rights related work in immigration, criminal, civil. They're very busy right now. Everyone is in overdrive right now. The legal apparatus here in the United States is working in overdrive, and we are collaborating with one another, and it's really just a snowball effect, and now we are like an army of lawyers out there, and everyone is fishing for their way to help. Like we're trying to find our way to help Palestine, and I actually have a pretty creative way that I think we can get at them under the law if you want to hear about it.
Yeah, anything that we can do or you can do to help Palestine. I mean,
so there's this one of the oldest federal laws in the United States, one of the oldest statutes. It's called the Alien Tort Statute.
Alien Tort Statute.
Alien Tort Statute. So obviously we discussed alien earlier, but an alien is someone who's not from the United States, and a tort is like a civil wrong. Right? It's not a crime. A crime is like a criminal wrong, or like a wrong that you have done that you can go to jail for. But a tort is a wrong that you have done that you have to pay money for. Okay. So basically, the Alien Tort Statute was like enacted in like 1786 or something like that. And it was a law that allowed U.S. citizens and the family of U.S. citizens to bring claims against pirates at sea.
So pirates?
Yeah, pirates. Like literal pirates. So like if you were on a ocean trip or in the sea on a boat, right, and your boat got invaded by some pirates and they stole your stuff, right, and they killed your children or whatever it is. If you ever find that pirate in the United States, you can sue him, even if he did that act outside of the country. This is called a terrestrial statute.
So they use alien and extraterrestrial?
Yes.
They both refer to...
Is it extraterrestrial or extra-jurisdictional? It's one of those. It's one of those. So it's, and what has been alarming to me is seeing all of these Americans go and, either fight with Israel or they go live in settlements over there. The other day I saw a news piece on this American guy who was living in a settlement in the West Bank, right? And he's walking around with some giant assault rifle, just patrolling the place, trespassing on people's land, hurting them. All of these things are torts. They're civil wrongs in which people can pay money for, right? We know for a fact that there are U.S. citizens out there who are in Israel. They're committing wrongs against people who are either American or have family in America, right? Like let's say, for example, my family's from the West Bank. My mom owns a piece of land there, right? And let's say settlers come in and take that land. That is a civil wrong that they have to pay for in the United States, right? That's called trespass or theft, right? So if I ever catch that person in the United States, I can sue them here for what they did over there in Palestine. Wow. And there's a lot of Americans over there. And they don't even have to be American. As long as you get them in the United States, you can serve them with their papers and you can sue them for what they did abroad.
And this can apply in any country, really?
Yes, but it's a very limited law. Actually, it kind of sat for like over 200 years and it wasn't ever used. And lately, really over the past like 20 or 30 years, lawyers have been trying to use it again. There was actually a huge case about this called Jesner versus Arab Bank, surprisingly. This case was about a group of Israeli, family of Israeli victims who were suing Arab Bank because they were funding Hamas. Okay, they were providing the banking infrastructure for Hamas. So the plaintiffs there, families of Israeli victims, sued Arab Bank. And that case went all the way to the US Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Arab Bank. They said that the Alien Tort Statute does not apply to corporations. Okay, so the Alien Tort Statute does not apply to nations or like diplomatic folks. It doesn't apply to corporations, but applies to people. So the quintessential kind of example for this is an Israeli settler. I mean, there's so many Americans over there. They're committing all kinds of trespass. They're committing all kinds of torts. And if you ever get them here in the United States, let's sue them. So I'm calling on all the internet detectives to find these people. And when they come into the United States, let's sue them for what they did.
Yeah, I might need Anonymous to...
Let's do it, Anonymous.
Crack down on these torts, is it?
Torts.
Torts. Waleed, it was an absolute pleasure having you. And, I learned so much about law, immigration law, the acts that Israel and U.S. are complicit in when it comes to Palestine. I think it was just a really interesting conversation. If we want to find you or, maybe someone listening will benefit from your services, what's the best way to reach out or find your page?
My website is nasserlegal.com. It has like all my contact info, a way to schedule a call with me. My social media, TikTok, YouTube is Naser Immigration Law. Check me out on there. Phone number also to the office is 312-248-2501. You guys can give me a call. And I'm glad to talk anything immigration, anything Palestine with you guys. So keep you updated.
I appreciate it, Waleed. Thank you so much.
No problem.